Wake up, nerds! It's your boy, the OGGM, coming to you at 8 o'clock in the morning here at Site B. It's foggy again because the weather hates me. Which means around 11, we'll have a sunlight and mugginess, but the afternoon will be gorgeous. Not that you care, but, you know, talking about the weather is a nice way to gently get us into today's first story. And since it's Friday, it's time to catch up on each and every one of the contestants in the ongoing ORC OGL Battle to End All Battles, King of the Ring, Money in the Bank, which is this weekend. What's going on with Paizo, Kobold, 1D&D, and the others? Starting with Paizo, and this is the big one. Okay, yeah. The final version of the ORC is here. It's the final version, which means now we have a orc license we can use. Now we have a downloaded of the red line of the orc license we can use. We have the ORC Ask Me Any Questions. So let's see what the ORC license looks like. And how do I cut and paste this to products? Looks pretty much the same as it did before, but we'll save it and go over it in a separate vlog. But okay, yes, so it is done. It is here. It is back. We have reached the end until they do another one. Now, eventually there will be, I guess, a thing that you can cut and paste and put on products if you want it protected by the orc. We're still a little confused about what the orc does and doesn't do. The whole morality clause, stuff like that. And, of course, the viral downstreaming, which I'm pretty sure Paizo just made up a word because I looked to see if that was an actual thing. And there was some vague references to it in the interweb, but generally it's just kind of like, you know, a pop culture word that doesn't mean anything. Okay, so yeah, that's what's going on with the Paizo, which for some reason the site isn't working. So that's fun. I'm sure there's some other things going on with Paizo, but that's the main thing we're concerned with. The ORC is up. It's running. It's there. If you want to see the final printout and start using it, the link is down below. Moving on to next. We have Tales from the Valiant. Tales from the Valiant news, or lack thereof. We know that the Tales of the Valiant Kickstarter ended. It crossed the $1 million line, but it doesn't look to be making as much money as Kelsey Dion's Shadow Dark is making. So why? Oh, it's because she's a girl. No, there's a lot of reasons why Shadow Dark was as successful as it was. But of course, now Kelsey's gotten a little break. And of course, what you're going to do next is, you know, pressure is probably starting to build on her. And she's got to start worrying about, well, what am I going to do next to continue the motivation? So I kind of feel bad for her. That said, Tales from the Valiant didn't make as much money as everybody predicted, including Kobold. So why did Tales of the Valiant fail? I mean, not, you know, $1 million Kickstarter a couple of years ago would be amazing, but now, I mean, I think they just did a poll between how many, you know, members of the $1 million clubs there are per year now on Kickstarter, and it's like so many now that it's like $1 million really doesn't mean anything. I mean, to me it would, but you know, as far as the Kickstarter algorithm is concerned, it's like, oh, you made $1 million, big deal. Talk to me when you make 9. So yeah, it's definitely going to be made. We'll have the final product, which will be the 2 books, their take on the Player's Handbook / DM's Guide, and their take on the Monster Manual / other half of the DM's Guide. So yeah. Your guess is as good as mine. I mean, you know, there was so much, wait, that's not what you meant. I still don't understand. Connected to this product. That could be a reason. Maybe there just really isn't a market for a 5e retro clone. You know, the 5e OSR hasn't really started yet. It will in about 2 years, I'm sure. So, you know, who knows? Who knows why they failed? But they failed. They made $1 million, possibly, you know, because the whole thing started on a I don't think you meant what you said, and kind of ended on a I don't think you meant what you said. So there was a little chicanery, a little manipulating of the facts involved with Kobold Press. Now, they could play the just, oh, you guys misunderstood. Or, I think we were very open. We said what we were going to do. You misunderstood. And maybe the beginning thing, I could be like, okay, yeah, maybe you did say one thing and we all heard something else because of when and if it happened. But the tail end thing about the whole, we just hit the $1 million mark just as the timeline ended, and it turned out that they had 10 more hours. It was a weekend, so you could say that the Kobold was like, well, it's Friday. So, yeah, we hit the $1 million mark. The extra 10 hours doesn't count. Who's going to, back us after Friday? So they could play that card too, but I think obviously Kobold expected them to make more money and come out swinging and being that this is the torchbearer to go forward after 5e inevitably dies. But now, who knows? They probably should have waited a year. They should have done like what Pathfinder did and just waited to the tail end and then release hey, here's the alternative to D&D 2024. They might have been better. Who knows? Moving on to C7d20, which we still know nothing about. Nothing about C7d20. If anybody has heard anything about C7d20, please let me know, because this has not been updated since March 27, and it's pretty much the same thing as it said before. We can expect a player's guide coming out at some point in time, and a Game Meister's guide at some point in time, and then an introduction to the fantasy world of C7d20 system. So other than it uses 7d20, or there's 7 stats that you're going to use a d20 for with, or it's just called 7d20 because the company's name is Crucible 7. I don't know. We don't know anything about this one. If anybody has heard anything about it, let me know. There's no links to anything other than it's probably going to be a 5e retro clone. What about the secret game that Green Ronin has been working on? Swords of the Shadow Planet. We don't know anything about that. We know what it's not. We know it's not going to be a system that uses the Age system. We know it's not going to use 5e. It's not going to use Pathfinder. It's not going to use M&M. Or it's not going to use D20. Well, sometimes it uses D20, but it doesn't. So what system do we know that they've messed around with in the past that doesn't use any OGL D20 mechanics? Savage Worlds? Call of Cthulhu? D6 system? Who knows? The Savage World system uses a D20 occasionally, but it's not a D20 system. So they could be making their take on the whole Savage World / index card RPG / other systems that use that same mechanic. They could be doing percentile. Could be just doing a D6 system because that seems to be the system everybody's using these days. Who knows? We just know that they were working on a secret game that nobody knew about. And now we still don't know anything about it. Though, you guys kind of dropped the ball on my beloved Freeport. So you definitely have gone down in my list of favorite companies. Moving on to Daggerheart. What is going on to the very anticipated Dagger to the Heart from Darrington Press, especially now, 1 month into Illuminated Worlds Candle Obscura, and already the hubbub Hufflepuff of Candle Obscura Illuminated Worlds has died down, and people have gone from, pitchforks and torches, middle fingers, throwing rocks through Matt Mercer's window. How dare you make this system to, what were we talking about? Why are we made? I don't know. They made a game. It wasn't just, let's face it, they did issue 1. That wasn't very popular. And then they waited an entire month for issue 2, which I guess went live last night. And I haven't heard anything about it yet, which doesn't say a lot, but we could go to the website and check. Just go to Twitch. Twitch, not Twitter, please. Twitch. All right. So they had Candle Obscura episode 2 last night. It had 28.7K views. Is that a lot? I'm not sure. Mercer GM the second episode as well. Looked like it had the same players as before, -1. It lasted almost 5 hours of them all wearing those silly costumes and doing silly voices. And it had a total of 28.7K views, as opposed to the last episode of Campaign 3, which had 248K views. So 28.7K views for Critical Role is not a lot. Is this a failed experiment? Or maybe it's just the wrong genre? Starting off with Victorian sci-fi steampunk horror probably wasn't the best one to show the system, and get that attention that, from Critical Role to Candle Obscura. If they could get that Zelda license to be one of the official licenses for Candle Obscura Illuminated Worlds, I think that would have been a much better choice. And going forward, that's probably what they should focus on to get that initial attraction to it. The reason why GURPS was so popular when it came out was not only just the fact that the timing, but the fact that they, had a way that really captured people's imagination and offered a different system. Right now, Illuminated Worlds is just lost amongst the static of so many other games coming out doing kind of the same thing. And then they started with sort of a Victorian Call of Cthulhu, arcane modern horror thing. And, that's not their target audience. So I don't know if it was the best choice. We'll see what the future holds for Illuminated Worlds. Meanwhile, and Candle Obscura. Meanwhile, Dagger to the Heart, nothing. No new news at Dagger to the Heart. There will be a preview at Gen Con, which is August, I believe. So there you go. That's all we know about that. Moving on to finally, Mundini. What is new with the game with has no name? Well, they rolled that condescending bastard. I mean, every time you look at that face, you're just like, you condescending bastard. They have released the largest player's handbook playtest since the last one. When they said they were not going to do anymore. Oh, wait, we lied. Now they're claiming, oh, no, this is the last one until we do another one. We know that they have looked at stuff for 7 of the 37 classes and changed a lot of stuff going forward by going back. It is still considered the experimentation phase. They're still claiming it's just an expansion of the 2014 Player's Handbook. We've refined a lot of stuff, but, as of now, the 2024 is different, but it's also not different. They've changed the Bard class a lot. Apparently, Bards have lost Healing Word, which was one of their big things. As for their inspiration, Clerics now can choose their Divine Order at first level, and they get the special ability of Blessed Strike, similar to Paladin's Smite, and they've redesigned the whole divine thing, so clerics are more well-rounded. I mean, because, they weren't broken enough. Cleric's the most broken class in the game. It's been the most broken class of the game in every edition. Druid, they changed Wild Shape again. And then now you have to have, instead of having the amorphous blob that you could make look like whatever you wanted, but had a certain stat block depending upon your level, they've gone back to sort of a version of the original way, where you've got to prepare the forms ahead of time, have the little cards with the stat blocks from each form that you choose, and then you can, of course, once you go to sleep, choose different forms for the day. And now you can also use Wild Shape to add to spell slots or sacrifice spell slots to get more Wild Shapes. You can use Wild Shape now to add more spell slots, or you can sacrifice Wild Shapes spell slots to get more Wild Shapes. Really? Really? Do you really think that given the choice between, I can cast a first level spell one more time per day, or, oh, I can turn into a lion one more time per day. Yeah. But I guess they figured that because the wild shape was so badly reviewed, they're like, oh, I guess people want it to be more like the old way. And people want it, it's like more wild shape focus. It's like literally Wizards of the Coast, the responses were no, we want druids to be more multifaceted spellcasters. We don't just want our big thing to be turning into a bear. Monk. They've given Monk a damage dice increase. Yay. They've designed Warrior of the Element, overhauled the various third level subclasses like Warrior of the Element. They've added the weapon mastery feature. So now they can do all the various weapon mastery things that fighter can do, like knock people over, stuff like that. Paladin they've changed Divine Smite to a spell. Most Smite spells are powered exclusive, and some have been updated instead of just, sacrificing spell slots to use Divine Smite more. Now you have Divine Smite as a spell, and then you can add more spells to it, to like Divine Smite plus Flame, Divine Smite plus bonuses versus sandwiches. I don't know. Lay on Hands has been changed to a bonus action. Fateful Steed has been changed to a spell, and now they have weapon mastery. Rangers, they've scaled down Hunter's Mark because that was the one thing that Rangers could do well. They have Conjure Barrage is now a Ranger exclusive spells. Why would we have exclusive spells to specific classes if your whole big thing was we're not doing that? Remember, they were like, no, we're just going to have 3 different schools of magic. I said 2. And, if you're an arcane caster, you can choose any spell from here. We're not going to do class specific. But then now they're like, okay, well, each class has got to have its iconic spell. Warlock's got to have Elder's Blast. Rangers got to have, I don't know, do they have an iconic spell? Because we've screwed them over. Hunter's Mark, sure. And Wizards, you get whatever you want. And Sorcerers, you get the remainder. So, but now I guess they're going back to the thinking that each class is going to have exclusive spells that they can use from the overall spell list, as opposed to them just having their own spell list, because I guess it saves a page that they can then use for more art, because we're getting 34 pages of art. And Rogue looks like pretty much the same, except now Rogues get weapon mastery. I mean, Rogue was the one that was fine. They said people complained about the Rogue and they wanted to redo the Rogue in the next playtest. But really, I read the Rogue and it's like, of all these, Rogue is fine. I mean, there's only so many ways you can do Rogue. Breaks down to basically, I search for traps. I pick locks. I disarm the trap. I sneak up behind the guy and backstab him. I played a Rogue for a long time in an AD&D campaign, and after a while they do get boring. So make of that what you will. That's it. If you want to see the playtest, it's available on D&D Beyond. It's the largest they've done. They've changed the subclass progression so back to the way it was before. So the subclass progression is now as it is in the 2014 Player's Handbook. Notice how they keep making sure that this is the 2014 Player's Handbook. And the 2024 Player's Handbook, which is not a new edition, it's not even an expansion, it's just an revision. So how about instead of calling it the 2024 Player's Handbook, you just call it Unearthed Arcana and release all this stuff in one book? Because I've seen no changes to monsters or DM stuff yet. It's just all, let's fuck with player characters. And let's fuck with player characters adjacent stuff. But as for, I don't know, monsters, treasures, random encounters, well, apparently there's going to be 20 extra pages of art in the DM's guide and maybe a new section. But yeah, why not just combine it all together, put it in a book, call it Unearthed Arcana 2024, make it a regular thing like Magic does or other things do. Once a year or once every other year, you put together a new Unearthed Arcana. It's one book. It contains all the new alterations. You can then go to people and go, you can choose to continue to play 2014 5e as written, which ends with what came out last? Was Tasha's last or Xanthers? No, it's Tasha's, then Xanthers, right? And then, well, the Mordecai and the other ones, those are all Munster books. So, yeah, I think Xanthers was the last one. So 2014 progression ends with Xanthers. And then we start with 2024 with Unearthed Arcana, Episode 1. Or we call it, I mean, who haven't we done yet? Tensor's Guide to stuff, because Tensor hasn't gotten a book yet. And you make it similar. You just make it the next Tasha's. Just that's it. Here is the new version of Tasha's. Here's everything we've changed. Here's everything we've added. But it's not new. We're not calling it 2024 D&D. We're just, here's another new book. If the whole thing is 5e isn't changing, we just revised some shit because the game evolved after, you know, from 2014 till now. Players have changed. So, yeah, we just revised some crap. We just added some new stuff. We changed some stuff. We did some virtual signaling. It's basically another Tasha's, we're going to call it. Tensor's Guide to the Sandwiches of the Multiverse. Bam, $24, $30 with 30 extra pages of pointless art. That would have been so much better if you did that. And I think it would have been way more appreciated, Wizards of the Coast, if you chose that version. That mentality. Instead, you're still basically making sure we understand that there is a difference between 2014 D&D and 2024 D&D. Now, for those of us who are old enough to remember, this sounds a lot like 3rd edition versus 3.5 edition. And even though you were like, well, you don't have to buy 3.5, we're just not going to make any product that supports 3 anymore. So you kind of have to buy 3.5. But they're not new editions, even though they are. And then 4 came out, but we're not going to talk about 4 because that's a whole separate kettle of fish. So now you're doing the exact same thing. You don't have to buy 2024 Dungeons & Dragons Player's Handbook, but we're not going to support anything that we made between 2014 and January 1st, 2024. So basically, it is a new edition. So you kind of do have to at least buy the new Player's Handbook, because characters in the new Player's Handbook and characters in the 2014 Player's Handbook, the power creep is so completely different that, as Bob Woldbuilder agreed with me, so if Bob Woldbuilder agrees with me, then it must be right. A post-Tasha's character / post-2024 character could kick the ass of any 2014 Player's Handbook character. No question. They are way more powerful, way more multifunctional, way different enough that, yeah, post-Tasha's is 5.1 and this is 5.5. So just either call it Dungeons & Dragons 5.5. Here is Tensor's Guide to the Multiverse, or Unearthed Arcana 2024. That's it. But you're basically still saying it's 2 separate things. You are continually to hammer in this difference between 2014 and 2024, which just like, yes, it's 2 different games. So just, yeah, either I am going to buy it or I'm not going to buy it. And most people, I think, right now are like, yeah, no, I'm not going to buy your shit, Wizards of the Coast. Typo. Calling detectives on people. Yeah, no. It's just another nail in the inevitable coffin of Wizards of the Coast run Dungeons & Dragons. And that's 24 minutes of me talking about everything new in the OSR OGL nonsense for today. Updates on the ORC, which we'll go over separately. Updates on Kobold Press Tales of the Valiant, which wasn't as successful as they thought. No new news in C7d20. No new news on Daggerheart, but Illuminated Worlds Candle Obscura not doing as well as we would have thought. No new news on whatever it is Green Ronin's making with Shadows of the Sorcerer World or whatever it's called. I don't know. Right now it just sounds like you're just doing Savage Worlds. And a lot of news from 1D&D / Dungeons & Dragons 2024 / Dungeons & Dragons 5.5. Call it what you will. It's a new edition. We all know it's a new edition, Wizards of the Coast, so just stop it, because this is exhausting. And we still have to address this week in the OSR. So till next time, I'm the OG GM. Thanks for spending time with me this morning. If you appreciate this content, let me know. If you never want to hear me talk about this ever again, too bad! But let me know what direction you want to see the channel take going into the summer and going into the second half of 2023. Gen Con's coming up. SDCC is coming up, so it's going to be interesting. I will talk to you later. Stay warm, stay dry, and stay off my land, you goddamn marks.